Hi, everybody. This is Greg. Please sing with me if you like, because it is the holidays. It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas everywhere you go. Take a look in the 5 and 10, glistening once again, with candy canes and silver lanes aglow. It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas. Toys in every store, but the prettiest sight you'll see is the holly that will be out on your front door. A pair of hop-along boots and a pistol that shoots is the wish of Barney and Ben. Dolls that will talk and then go for a walk is the hope of Janice and Jen. Mom and Dad can hardly wait for school to start again. It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas everywhere you go. There's a tree in the Grand Hotel and one in the park as well, the sturdy kind that doesn't mind the snow. It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas, and soon the bells will start, and the thing that will make them ring is the carol that you sing right within your heart. Please welcome John Pentland, ladies and gentlemen. There he is.
Thank you very much, Tim. Welcome to Hillhurst United Church. Good evening. My name is John Pentland, lead minister at Hillhurst, and we welcome you. And we begin with our land acknowledgement. In the spirit of reconciliation, we acknowledge that we live and work and play on the traditional territories of the Blackfoot Confederacy, Siksika, Kainai, and Piikani people, the Tsuut'ina people, the Nakota First Nations people, Chiniki, Bearspaw, and Goodstoney, and the Métis Districts 5 and 6, and all people who make their homes on Treaty 7 region in southern Alberta. We are called to do our work of truth and reconciliation. Senator Murray Sinclair, who recently passed away, said, "Education is our way forward." And so it's up to us to acknowledge the people who are here before us, who stewarded this land, and for us to do our job to cultivate and take care of the land for future generations. I have been the lead minister here at Hillhurst for 20 years. Hillhurst is a church that says, yes, we can. Yes, we can to challenge. And we are situated in a city, Calgary, where I think when we're at our best, we all say, yes, we can. Over the years, yes, I would applaud at that too. Over the years, we have had many challenges as a city. Some of the challenges have been the flood of June 2013, the Ukrainian refugee crisis of 2022, the water shortage in the summer of 2024, every year when the Flames don't make the playoffs, the pandemic of 2020. You may have others. Our ceiling crack is no crisis for the city. However, in all of these crises, when people say, yes, we can, we're all in this together, we rally. I believe Calgary is a city of creative energy, opportunity, and a tendency toward unstuckness. Now, that is not a word you can try to use in Wordle, I know. But Calgary, when it's unstuck, is open, it's new, it's vibrant, it looks for possibility and creativity. Calgary says, yes, we can to many of the challenges before us. And tonight we are saying, yes, we can. Yes, we can raise the roof. Tonight is a fundraiser, of course, but it's way more than that. This is a community builder. This is you people here and online, sitting together here on hard, uncomfortable pews or lounging wherever you are to say, yes, we can raise the roof. It's a fundraiser, but it is a community builder. People coming together in times of struggle to support each other. The scaffolding, which is to my left, this beautiful piece of art I invite you to come and see later on, is a beautiful metaphor for life. a reminder that we all need scaffolding support at some times. The scaffolding holds this building up, and you are safe right now, do not worry. But we all need someone to help us stand up and walk when we feel like we're going to fall. We all need support, and that's what tonight is all about, support. When Hillhurst opened 115 years ago in the city, the Calgary Herald had a headline, 7-day-a-week church opens in Kensington. This spot I'm standing is a place where feminist Nellie McClung, author, politician, and activist, stood and preached a sermon right here. This church is where Meals on Wheels had its first beginning in our city, serving shut-ins. This is a church that baked pies for the Calgary Stampede in the 1950s. This is a city that's hosted many city mayors, and the Lieutenant Governor of Alberta, Normie Kwong, played basketball in the basement of this church. We are a place of hospitality for the city's vulnerable, offering food and clothing and conversation. We have hosted leaders of every religious tradition in this church, and on a regular basis, we host weddings, funerals, baptisms, and we seek to offer a meaningful Sunday morning experience. A third of the people that come here grew up in the United Church, like me. Another third grew up in another tradition, evangelical or Catholic, and some no church at all, and all people belong. This is an affirming church that welcomes all people, regardless of age, stage, sexual orientation, religious or not. These hard, uncomfortable pews say, you belong 7 days a week. In a few days, we're going to host probably 1,200 people here on Christmas Eve, people who want space to reflect, to cry, to laugh, and to dream, to pray, to sing. This building is a city church, and it's not just a sanctuary, it's a place for all people. For 115 years, we've been a place of hospitality, a place to eat and drink together. Hospitality is one of our values, and tonight, one of our storytellers, Julie Van Rosendaal, has baked 500 cookies in hospitality for you. Our second value we practice in this church is spirituality. We know not all people are religious, but we welcome people to nurture their souls through the programming and worship in this place, recognizing that it's not about religion, it's about good religion that matters. And we honor and respect different world religions and those who find meaning in other pathways. Our third value is social justice. We say you got to take what you say and sing to transform the world, with the Bible in one hand and the newspaper in the other, or iPhone in one hand and the newspaper in the other. How do we come together with our faith to transform the world? The last value here is risk, and as I said before, you are not at risk in this building. But we do believe that being a faithful person means taking risks, to question, to make mistakes, and to wonder how the world might be the world God dreams. And so that is who this church is today: hospitality, spirituality, social justice, and risk. And the banner out front says, whoever you are, wherever you're at, join us on the journey. When the crack in the ceiling came, and I invite you to peer a little bit later, don't get too close, it's not that safe. When the news of the crack of the ceiling came, my heart literally broke, because here we are in the renovation of our 65-year-old gymnasium. We're updating our gym and our kitchen and creating a pickleball space. And so it's going to be called Pickleball or Pray, and I know what's going to win. The truth is, we were quite upset about this, because we're doing that and then this. We didn't need the room to fall apart. Even though Leonard Cohen says the crack in everything, and that's how the light gets in, I found myself muttering, I'm fine with no cracks and darkness, thanks, Leonard. But here we are. And then 2 weeks ago, I was riding my bike to work, and I got a call from my friend David Gray, who said, just like a Calgarian, I have an idea. And here we are tonight, as I almost rode into the Bow River, to be here with an idea. And you are here because you heard this idea to help us raise the roof. So tonight, friends in person and online, take time tonight to enjoy the great singers and storytellers, to sit on these uncomfortable pews and daydream, to deepen your soul, to take time to laugh and to cry, And to remember, just like the ceiling to my left, we're all a bit cracked, we're all a bit scarred, we're all aging and falling apart, but each of us have the support of others, and they will hold us till we are healed and repaired. So tonight, if you would like to make a donation, you can at that machine there and this machine here. But tonight, we want to say deep thanks and gratitude for our performers and for you. Enjoy the great show, meet the people around you, and thank you, audience and cast, for raising the roof and helping us to continue to be a church in the city. I welcome David Gray.
How old is this church? Built in 1912. You look around this building, and I don't know about you, but I think of all the christenings and the weddings and the funerals that have happened in this place over all those years. I also think about the ghosts that wander the aisles and are hidden somewhere in this building. You're going to meet some ghosts tonight, I promise you. Charles Dickens wrote A Christmas Carol in 1843. The notion hit him while he was visiting the northern industrial town of Manchester, England. He made a speech there about the necessity of educating poor children. He was appalled by the state of the labor practices in Britain at the time, particularly child labor. When he got back to London, something compelled him to drop everything he was working on, and he started writing what would become A Christmas Carol. It took him only 6 weeks to finish. You see, Dickens had grown up in the kind of hardship that he would write about, including working in a factory while his father was in debtor's prison. He knew what he was writing about. So not long after, it became a tradition of giving public readings all over Britain and in Paris and in the United States. From the outset, he performed these readings for charities, for causes such as this one. He gave 127 performances in all, right up until he died in 1870. The original version took 3 hours. How do those pews feel? We're not doing 3 hours. It's been shortened. Tonight's will be broken into 5 parts. Please welcome some ghosts from my own past who volunteered tonight to tell the story. Joining me to read tonight are Tim Tamashiro, who we've already heard, Barb Higgins, the amazing Jonathan Love, who will be batting cleanup tonight, and the reason that there's sugar here to keep us all going, Julie Van Rosendaal. Of course, it wouldn't be Christmas without music. Tim will sing some more tunes for us tonight with our talented piano player, Greg Massey. My friends Wayne Immonen and Nuna Collins, who should be coming out here right now. There they are. They're going to join us this evening, and they're going to lead us off with the first tune tonight. And we're very lucky to have a surprise appearance of a performer tonight who told me I wasn't allowed to say all the wonderful things that have happened to him through his career, like being nominated for a Juno and Folk Music Festival Solo Artist of the Year last year. Anyway, John Ward Hannum is here tonight. And he's going to sing for us as well. Quick bit of housekeeping. There will be a short intermission after the third reading and a song that follows. You can all get up and you can have some cookies and stuff. But let's get the show started. Please welcome Wayne Immonen and Nuna Collins. Take it away, guys.
Alas, my love, you do me wrong to cast me off discourteously. And I have loved you so long, delighting in your company. Green sleeves was all my joy. Green sleeves was my delight. Green sleeves was my heart of gold. And who but my lady green sleeves? I have been ready at your hand to grant whatever you would crave. I have both wagered life and land, your love and goodwill for to have. Green sleeves was all my joy. Green sleeves was my delight. Green sleeves was my heart of gold. And who but my lady green sleeves?
Marley was dead to begin with. There's no doubt whatever about that. The register of his burial was signed by the clergyman, the clerk, the undertaker, and the chief mourner. Scrooge signed it, and Scrooge's name was good for anything he chose to put his hand to. Old Marley was as dead as a doornail. Scrooge knew he was dead? Well, of course he did. How could it be otherwise? Scrooge and he were partners for I don't know how many years. Scrooge was his sole executor, his sole administrator, his sole assign, his sole residuary legatee, his sole friend, and his sole mourner. Scrooge never painted out Marley's name, however. There it stood years afterwards above the warehouse door, Scrooge and Marley. The firm was known as Scrooge and Marley, and sometimes Scrooge would answer to Scrooge, and sometimes Marley. He answered to both names. It was all the same to him. Oh, but he was a tight-fisted hand at the grindstone, was old Scrooge. A squeezing, wrenching, grasping, scraping, clutching, covetous old sinner. Nobody ever stopped him in the street to say with gladsome looks, "My dear Scrooge, how are you? When will you come to see me?" No beggars implored him to bestow a trifle. No children asked him what it was o'clock. No man or woman ever once in all his life inquired the way to such and such a place of old Scrooge. Even the blind man's dogs appeared to know him, and when they saw him coming on, they would wag their tails and pull their owners into doorways and up courts, as though to say, "No eye at all is better than an evil eye, dark master." But what did Scrooge care? Once upon a time, of all the good days in the year, upon a Christmas Eve, old Scrooge sat busy in his counting house. It was cold, bleak, biting, foggy weather, and the city clocks had gone just 3, but it was quite dark already. The door of Scrooge's counting house was open that he might keep an eye upon his clerk, who in a dismal little cell beyond, a sort of tank, was copying letters. Scrooge had a very small fire, but the clerk's fire was so much smaller that it looked like one coal. But he couldn't replenish it, for Scrooge kept the coal box in his own room. And so surely as the clerk came in with a shovel, the master predicted that it would be necessary for them to part. Wherefore the clerk put on his white comforter and tried to warm himself at the candle, in which effort, not being a man of strong imagination, he failed. "A Merry Christmas, Uncle! God save you!" cried a cheerful voice. It was the voice of Scrooge's nephew, who came upon him so quickly that this was the first intimation Scrooge had of his approach. "Bah," said Scrooge. "Humbug." "Christmas? A humbug, Uncle? You don't mean that, I'm sure." "I do. Out upon Merry Christmas. What's Christmas time to you but a time for paying bills without money? A time for finding yourself a year older and not an hour richer? A time for balancing your books and having every item in them through a round dozen of months presented dead against you? If I had my will, every idiot who goes about with Merry Christmas on his lips should be boiled with his own pudding and buried with a stake of holly right through the heart, he should. Uncle, nephew, you keep Christmas in your own way, and let me keep it in mine." "Keep it? But you don't keep it." "Let me leave it alone then. Much good it do to you, much good it has ever done you." "Uncle, there are many things from which I might have derived good, by which I have not profited, I dare say, Christmas among the rest. But I am sure I have always thought of Christmas time, when it has come round, apart from the veneration due to its sacred origin, if anything belonging to it can be apart from that, as a good time, a kind, forgiving, charitable, pleasant time, the only time that I know of in the long calendar of the year, when men and women seem by one consent to open up their shut-up hearts freely and to think of people below them as if they really were fellow travelers to the grave and not another race of creatures bound on other journeys. And therefore, Uncle, though it has never put a scrap of gold or silver in my pocket, I believe that it has done me good and it will do me good, and I say, God bless it." The clerk in the tank involuntarily applauded. "Let me hear another sound from you," said Scrooge, "and you'll keep your Christmas by losing your situation. You're quite a powerful speaker, sir," he added, turning to his nephew. "I wonder you don't go into Parliament." "Don't be angry, Uncle. Come on. Dine with us tomorrow." Scrooge said that, he would see him. Yes, indeed, he did. He went the whole length of the expression and said that he would see him in that extremity first. "But why?" cried Scrooge's nephew. "Why?" "Why did you get married?" "Oh, because I fell in love." "Because you fell in love," growled Scrooge, as if that were the only one thing in the world more ridiculous than a Merry Christmas. "Good afternoon." "Nay, Uncle, but you never came to see me before that happened. Why give it as a reason for not coming to see me now?" "Good afternoon." I want nothing from you, uncle. I ask nothing of you. Why cannot we be friends? Good afternoon. I am sorry with all my heart to find you so resolute. We have never had any quarrel to which I've been a party, but I have made the trial in homage to Christmas, and I will keep my Christmas humor to the last. So, a Merry Christmas, Uncle. Good afternoon. And a Happy New Year. Good afternoon. His nephew left the room without an angry word notwithstanding. The clerk, in letting Scrooge's nephew out, had let two other people in. They were portly gentlemen, pleasant to behold, and now stood with their hats off in Scrooge's office. They had books and papers in their hands, and they bowed to him. Scrooge and Marley's, I believe, said one of the gentlemen, referring to his list. Have I the pleasure of addressing Mr. Scrooge or Mr. Marley? Mr. Marley has been dead these 7 years. He died 7 years ago this very night. Oh, well then. At this festive season of the year, Mr. Scrooge, said the gentleman, taking up a pen, it's more than usually desirable that we should make some slight provision for the poor and destitute, who suffer greatly at the present time. Many thousands are in want of common necessaries. Hundreds of thousands are in want of common comfort, sir. Are there no prisons? Plenty of prisons, but under the impression that they scarcely furnish Christian cheer of mind or body to an unoffending multitude, a few of us are endeavoring to raise a fund to buy the poor some meat and drink and means of warmth. We choose this time because it is a time of all others when want is keenly felt and abundance rejoices. What shall I put you down for? Nothing. You wish to be anonymous? I wish to be left alone. Since you ask me what I wish, gentlemen, that is my answer. I don't make merry myself at Christmas, and I can't afford to make idle people merry. I help to support the prisons and the workhouses. They cost enough. And those who are badly off must go there. Many can't go there. Many would rather die. Well, if they would rather die, they had better do it and decrease the surplus population. At length, the hour of shutting up the counting house arrived. With an ill-will, Scrooge, dismounting from his stool, tacitly admitted the fact to the expectant clerk in the tank, who instantly snuffed his candle out and put on his hat. You'll want all day tomorrow, I suppose. Well, if quite convenient, sir. It's not convenient, and it's not fair. If I was to stop half a crown for it, you'd think yourself mightily ill-used, I'll be bound. Yes, sir. And you don't think me ill-used when I pay a day's wages for no work? It's only once a year, sir. A poor excuse for picking a man's pocket every 25th of December. But I suppose you must have the whole day. Be here all the earlier the next morning. The clerk promised that he would, and Scrooge walked out with a growl. The office was closed in a twinkling, and the clerk, with the long ends of his white comforter dangling below his waist, for he boasted no greatcoat, went down a slide at the end of a lane of boys, 20 times in honor of it being Christmas Eve. And then he ran home, as hard as he could pelt, to play at blind man's bluff.
Upon my tabletop, the snow is softly falling. The air is still in the silence of my room. I hear your voice softly calling. If I could only have you near to breathe a sigh or two. is rising in the shadows overhead. My glass is almost empty. I read again between the lines upon each page, the words of love you sent me. If I could know within my heart you were lonely too, I would be happy just to hold the hands I love on this winter's night with you. Fire is burning low, my lamp is growing dim. Shades of night are lifting. Morning light steals across my window pane. Webs of snow are drifting. If I could only have you near to breathe a sigh or two, would be happy just to hold the hands I love on this winter's night with you. I would be happy just to hold the hands I love on this winter's night with you.
Scrooge took his melancholy dinner in his usual melancholy tavern, and having read all the newspapers and beguiled the rest of the evening with his banker's book, went home to bed. He lived in chambers which had once belonged to his deceased partner. They were a gloomy suite of rooms in a lowering pile of building up a yard. The building was old enough now and dreary enough, for nobody lived in it but Scrooge, the other rooms being all let out as offices. Now, it is a fact that there was nothing at all particular about the knocker on the door of the house, except that it was very large. Also, that Scrooge had seen it night and morning during his whole residence in that place, and that Scrooge had as little of what could be called fancy about him as any man in the city of London. And yet Scrooge, having his key in the lock of the door, saw in the knocker, without its undergoing any intermediate process of change, not a knocker, but Marley's face. Ooh. Marley's face, with a dismal light about it like a bad lobster in a dark cellar. It was not angry or ferocious, but it looked at Scrooge as Marley used to, with ghostly spectacles turned up on its ghostly forehead. As Scrooge looked fixedly at this phenomenon, it was a knocker again. He said, "Pooh-pooh," and closed the door with a bang that resounded throughout the house like thunder. Every room above and every cask in the wine merchant's cellars below appeared to have a separate peal of echoes, all their own. Scrooge was not a man to be frightened by echoes. He fastened the door and walked across the hall and up the stairs, slowly, too, trimming his candle as he went. Up Scrooge went, not caring a button for its being very dark. Darkness is cheap, and Scrooge liked it. But before he shut his heavy door, he walked through his rooms to see that all was right. He had just enough recollection of that face to desire to do so. Sitting room, bedroom, lumber room, all as they should be. Nobody under the table, nobody under the sofa, a small fire in the grate, spoon and basin ready, and the little saucepan of gruel, Scrooge had a cold in his head, upon the hob. Nobody under the bed, nobody in the closet, nobody in his dressing gown, which was hanging up in a suspicious attitude against the wall. Quite satisfied, he closed the door and locked himself in. Double locked himself in, which was not his custom. Thus secured against surprise, he took off his cravat, put on his dressing gown, and his nightcap, and sat down before the very low fire to take his gruel. As he threw his head back in his chair, his glance happened to rest upon a bell. A disused bell that hung in the room and communicated, for some purpose now forgotten, with a chamber in the highest story of the building. And it was with great astonishment and with a strange, inexplicable dread that as he looked, he saw this bell begin to swing. Exactly. And soon it rang out, as did every bell in the house. And then, succeeded by the bell, was a clanking noise. Deep down below, as if some person were dragging a heavy chain over the casks in the wine merchant's cellar. Then he heard it much louder, on the floors below, then coming up the stairs, and then coming straight towards the door. It came through the heavy door, and a specter passed into the room before his eyes. And upon its coming in, the dying flame leaped up as though it cried, "I know him, Marley's ghost!" The same face, the very same. Marley in his pigtail, usual waistcoat, tights, and boots, his body was transparent, so that Scrooge, observing him and looking through his waistcoat, could see the 2 buttons on his coat behind. Scrooge had often heard that Marley had no bowels, but he had never believed it until now. No, nor did he believe it even now. Though he looked the phantom through and saw it standing before him. Though he felt the chilling influence of its death-cold eyes and noticed the very texture of the folded kerchief bound about its head and chin, he was still incredulous. "How now," said Scrooge, caustic and cold as ever. "What do you want with me?" "Much." Ooh, Marley's voice, no doubt about it. "Who are you?" "Ask me who I was." "Who were you then?" "In life, I was your partner, Jacob Marley." Can you sit down?" "I can." "Do it then." Scrooge asked this question because he didn't know whether a ghost so transparent might find himself in a condition to take a chair. But the ghost sat down on the opposite side of the fireplace as if he were quite used to it. "You don't believe in me." "I don't." "What evidence would you have of my reality beyond that of your senses?" I don't know." "Why do you doubt your senses?" Because a little thing affects them. A slight disorder of the stomach makes them cheats. You may be an undigested bit of beef, a blot of mustard, a crumb of cheese, a fragment of an underdone potato. There's more of gravy than of grave about you, whatever you are. Scrooge was not much in the habit of cracking jokes, nor did he feel in his heart, by any means, waggish then. But the truth is that he tried to be smart as a means of distracting his own attention and keeping down his horror. But how much greater was his horror when the phantom, taking off the bandage round its head as if it were too warm to wear indoors, its lower jaw dropped down upon its breast. Mercy! Oh, dreaded apparition, why do you trouble me? Why do spirits walk the earth, and why do they come to me? It is required of every man that the spirit within him should walk abroad among his fellow men and travel far and wide. And if that spirit goes not forth in life, it is condemned to do so after death. I cannot tell you all I would. A very little more is permitted to me. I cannot rest. I cannot stay. I cannot linger anywhere. My spirit never walked beyond our counting house. Mark me, in life my spirit never roved beyond the narrow limits of our money-changing hole, and weary journeys lie before me. 7 years dead and traveling all the time. You travel fast on the wings of the wind. You might have got over a great quantity of ground in 7 years. Oh, blind man, not to know that no space of regret can make amends for one life's opportunities misused. Yet I was like this man. I once was like this man. But you were always good at business, Jacob. Scrooge was faltering because he was now applying this to himself. Business. Mankind was my business. The common welfare was my business. Charity, mercy, forbearance, benevolence, all my business. The dealings of my trade were but a drop of water in the comprehensive ocean of my business, and it held up its chain at arm's length as if that were the cause of its unavailing grief, and flung it heavily upon the ground again. At this time of the rolling year, I suffer the most. Why did I walk through crowds of fellow beings with my eyes turned down and never raise them to that blessed star which led the wise men to a poor abode? Were there no poor homes to which its light would have conducted me? Scrooge was very much dismayed to hear the specter going on at this rate and began to quake exceedingly. Hear me. My time is nearly gone. I will, but pray don't be hard on me, Jacob. Don't be flowery. I am here tonight to warn you that you have yet a chance and hope of escaping my fate, a chance and hope of my procuring Ebenezer. You were always a good friend to me, thank ye. You will be haunted by 3 spirits. Is that the chance and hope that you are giving me, Jacob? I would rather not. Without their visits, you cannot hope to shun the path I tread. Expect the first tomorrow night when the bell tolls 1. Expect the second on the next night at the same hour. The third upon the next night when the last stroke of 12 has ceased to vibrate. Look to see me no more, and look that, for your own sake, you remember what has passed between us. It stood and walked backward from him, and at every step it took, the window raised itself a little, so that when the apparition reached it, it was wide open, and it floated out through the self-opened window into the bleak, dark night. Scrooge closed the window and examined the door with which the ghost had come through. It was double locked, as he had locked it with his own hands, and the bolts were undisturbed. Scrooge tried to say, "Humbug," but stopped at the first syllable. And being from the emotion he had undergone, or the fatigues of the day, or his glimpse of the invisible world, or the dull conversation with the ghost, or the lateness of the hour, much in need of repose, he went straight to bed without undressing and fell asleep on the instant.
Mom got drunk and Dad got drunk at her Christmas party. They were drinking champagne punch and homemade eggnog. Little sister bought her new boyfriend. He was a Republican. We didn't know what to think of him till he sang Feliz Navidad, Feliz Navidad. Cousin Lou brought his kids with him, the two from his first wife Lynn, and the two identical twins from his second wife Mary now. Of course he brought his new wife Kate, who talked all about AA, chain smoking while the stereo played Noel, Noel, oh, the first Noel. We carved the turkey, turned the ball game on, make margaritas cause we all want one. Sent somebody to the quick pack store, we need some ice and an extension cord, a can of bean dip and some diet Sprite, a box of tampons and some Marlboro lights. Well, hallelujah, everybody say cheese. Happy Christmas from the family. Jacob came from Wetaskiwin, not sure how I'm kin to him, but when he tried to plug his motorhome in, it blew our Christmas lights. Little sister knew what went wrong. We all waited out on our front lawn. She threw the breaker and the lights came on, and we sang Silent Night, oh Silent Night. Turkey, turn the ball game on, make margaritas cause we all want one. Send somebody to the quick pack store, we need some ice and an extension cord, a can of bean dip and some diet Sprite, box of tampons and some Marlboro lights. Well, hallelujah, everybody say cheese. Happy Christmas from the family.
Thanks, everybody.
It was Christmas in prison. The food was real good. We had turkey and pistols carved out of wood. I dream of her always, and when I don't dream, her name's on my tongue and her blood's in my stream. Wait a while, eternity. Oh, Mother Nature's got nothing on me. Come to me, run to me, come to me now. We're rolling, my sweetheart, we're flowing by God. She reminds me of a chess game with someone I admire, or a picnic in the rain after a prairie fire. Her heart is as big as this old damn jail. She's sweeter than saccharin in a drugstore sale. Wait a while, eternity. Oh, Mother Nature's got nothing on me. Come to me, run to me, come to me now. We're rolling, my sweetheart, we're flowing by God. And the spotlight in the big yard goes round with the gun and spotlights the snowflakes like dust in the sun. It's Christmas in prison, there'll be music tonight. I'll probably get homesick, I love you, good night. It's Christmas in prison, there'll be music tonight. I'll probably get homesick, I love you, good night.
I am not stripping like Barb did. When Scrooge awoke, it was so dark that looking out of bed, he could scarcely distinguish the transparent window from the opaque walls of his chamber until suddenly the church clock tolled a deep, dull, hollow, melancholy 1. Light flashed up in the room upon the instant, and the curtains of his bed were drawn by a strange figure, like a child, yet not so like a child, was like an old man, viewed through some supernatural medium, which gave him the appearance of having receded from view and being diminished to a child's proportions. Its hair, which hung about its neck and down its back, was white as if with age, and yet the face had not a wrinkle on it, and the tenderest bloom was on the skin. It held a branch of fresh green holly in its hand, and in singular contradiction of that wintry emblem, had its dress trimmed with summer flowers. But the strangest thing about it was that from the crown of its head there sprung a clear jet of light, by which all this was visible, and which was doubtless the occasion of its using, in its duller moments, a great extinguisher for a cap, which was now held under its arm. "Are you the spirit, sir, whose coming was foretold to me?" "I am." "Who and what are you?" "I am the ghost of Christmas past." "Long past?" "No, your past. The things that you see with me are shadows of the things that have been. They will have no consciousness of us, but rise and walk with me." It would have been in vain for Scrooge to plead that the weather and the hour were not adapted to pedestrian purposes, that bed was warm, and the thermometer was a long way below zero, that he had clad lightly in his slippers and dressing gown like Barb, and he had a cold upon him at the time. The grasp, though gentle from the Spirit, was as gentle as a woman's hand. It was not to be resisted. He rose. But finding that the Spirit, made towards the window, clasped his robe in caution, Scrooge said, I am mortal and liable to fall. Bear but a touch of my hand here, said the Spirit, laying upon his heart, and you shall be upheld in more than this. As the words were spoken, they passed through the wall and suddenly stood in the busy thoroughfare of the city. It was made plain enough by the dressing of the shops that here, too, it was Christmas time. The ghost stopped at a certain warehouse door and asked Scrooge if he knew it. Know it? I apprenticed here. They went in. At the sight of an old gentleman in a Welsh wig sitting behind such a high desk that he had been just 2 inches taller, he must have knocked his head against the ceiling. Scrooge cried in great excitement, Why, it's old Fezziwig. Bless his heart, it's Fezziwig alive again. Old Fezziwig laid his pen down and looked up at the clock, which pointed to the hour 7. He rubbed his hands together, adjusted his capacious waistcoat, laughed all over himself from his shoes to his eyebrows, and called out in a comfortable, oily, rich, fat, jovial voice, Yo-ho there, Ebenezer! And Dick! A living and moving picture of Scrooge's former self, as a young man, came briskly in, accompanied by his fellow apprentice. Dick Wilkins, to be sure, said Scrooge to the ghost. My old fellow apprentice, bless me, yes, there he is. He's very much attached to me, was Dick. Poor Dick, dear, dear. Yo, my boy, said Fezziwig. No more work tonight. Christmas Eve, Dick. Christmas, Ebenezer. Let's have the shutters up. Before a man can say, Jack Robinson, clear away, my lads. Have all the lots of room here. Clear away. Let there nothing they wouldn't have cleared away, or they couldn't have cleared away, with old Fezziwig looking on, and it was all done in a moment. Every movable was packed off, as if it was dismissed from public life evermore. And the floor was swept and watered, and the lamps were trimmed, fuel was heaped upon the fire, and the warehouse was snug and warm and dry and bright as a ballroom, and you could just desire to see upon a winter's night. In came a fiddler with a music book, and he went up on the lofty desk and made a stage of it, and he tuned his fiddle to the sound of 50 stomach aches. In came Mrs. Fezziwig, one vast, substantial smile. In came 3 Miss Fezziwigs, beaming and lovable. In came 6 young followers whose hearts they had broken. In came all the young men and women employed in the business. In came the household with their housemaid with her cousin, the baker. In came the cook with her brother's particular friend, the milkman. They all came in one after another, some shyly, some boldly, some gracefully, some awkwardly. Some pushing, some pulling. In they came, anyhow and everyhow. Anyway, they all went. 20 couples at once. Hands round half and back around the other, down the middle and up again, round and round in various stages of affectionate grouping. The old top couple was turning up in the wrong place, and new top couple starting off again. As soon as they got there, all top couples at last, and not a bottom one to help them. I don't know what that means. When this result was brought about, old Fezziwig clapped his hands to stop the dance, crying out, Well done! And the fiddler plunged to his hot face into a pot of porter especially provided for that purpose. And there were more dances, and there were forfeits, and there was more dances, and there was cake, and there was spiced wine, and there was a great piece of cold roast, and there was a great piece of cold boiled, and there were mince pies and plenty of beer. But the great effect of the evening came after the roast and boiled. when the fiddler struck up his tune, Sir Roger de Coverley. Then old Fezziwig stood out and to dance with Mrs. Fezziwig, top couple too. And with a good stiff piece of work cut out for them, 3 or 4 and 20 pairs of partners, people who were not to be trifled with, and people who would dance and had no notion of walking. But they had twice as many, 4 times, old Fezziwig would have been a match for them, and so would Mrs. Fezziwig. As to her, she was worthy to be his partner in every sense of the word. A positive light appeared to issue from Fezziwig's calves. They shone in every part of the dance. You couldn't have predicted at any given time what would come of them next. And when old Fezziwig and Mrs. Fezziwig had gone through all the dance, advance and retire, turn your partner, bow and curtsy, corkscrew, thread the needle, and back again to your place, Fezziwig cut so deftly that he appeared to wink with his legs. When the clock struck 11, this domestic ball broke up, and Mr. and Mrs. Fezziwig took their stations, one on either side of the door, and shaking hands with every person individually as he or she went out, wishing him or her a Merry Christmas. When everybody had retired but 2 apprentices, they did the same to them, and thus the cheerful voices died away, and the lads were left to their beds, which were under a counter in the back shop. A small matter, said the ghost, to make these silly folks so full of gratitude. He spent but a few pounds of your mortal money, 3, maybe 4, perhaps. Is that so much that he deserves this praise? It isn't that, said Scrooge, heated by the remark and speaking unconsciously like the former, not the latter self. It isn't that, Spirit. He has the power to render us happy or unhappy, to make our service light or burdensome, a pleasure or a toil. Say that his power lies in the words and looks, in small, so slight and insignificant ways that it's impossible to add them up and count them up. What then? The happiness he gives is quite as great as it would cost a fortune. He felt the Spirit's glance and stopped. What is the matter? Queried the Spirit. Nothing particular. Something, I think. No. I should like to be able to say a word or two to my clerk just now, that's all. My time grows short, observed the Spirit. Quick. This was not addressed to Scrooge or anyone whom he could see, but it produced an immediate effect. For again, he saw himself. He was older now, a man in the prime of his life. And he was not alone, but sat by the side of a fair young girl in a black dress, in whose eyes were filled with tears. It matters little, she said, softly to Scrooge's former self. To you, very little. Another idol has displaced me. And if it can comfort you in time to come, I would have tried to do. I just have no cause to grieve. What idol displaced you? A golden one. I've seen your nobler aspirations fall off one by one until the master passion, riches, money, engrossed you. Have you not? What then? Even if I have grown so much wiser, what then? I'm not changed towards you. I've never sought release from our engagement. In words, no, never. In what then? In changed nature, an altered spirit, in another atmosphere of life, another hope at its great end. If you were free today, tomorrow, yesterday, can I even believe that you would choose a dowerless girl? Or in choosing her, do I not know that your repentance and regret would surely follow? I do. And I release you with a heart full for the love of him you once were. Scrooge's face fell, and a melancholy regret flashed upon his soul. Spirit, remove me from this place. I told you that these shadows of things are shadows of things that have been, said the ghost, that they are what they are. Do not blame me. Remove me, Scrooge exclaimed. I cannot bear it. Leave me. Take me back. Haunt me no more. As he struggled with the spirit, he was conscious of being exhausted and overcome by an irresistible drowsiness, and further, of being again in his own bedroom. He barely had time to reel to bed before he sank into a deep, dark, heavy sleep. This Scrooge guy reminds me of somebody. Greg, where are you? It doesn't remind me of you. Greg, ladies and gentlemen. You're a mean one, Mr. Grinch. You really are a heel. You're as cuddly as a cactus. You're as charming as an eel, Mr. Grinch. You're a bad banana with a greasy black peel. You're a monster, Mr. Grinch. Your heart's an empty hole, and your brain is full of spiders. You have garlic in your soul, Mr. Grinch. I wouldn't touch you with a 39.5-foot pole. You're a rotter, Mr. Grinch. You're the king of sinful sots, and your heart's a dead tomato splotched with moldy purple spots, Mr. Grinch. And your soul is an appalling dump heap overflowing with the most disgraceful assortment of rubbish imaginable, all mangled up and tangled up in moss and knots, and I know 3 words that would best describe you, and they are stink, stank, and stunk. Come on, John. John Waterhand, one more time before I tell you, ladies and gentlemen. You coming? You're doing the blue, okay? Here, have the blue. I'll move this. Okay, is this the blue? You're doing good. This is the blue here. Okay. Excellent, thank you. Just go right there, yeah?
I don't really want to follow that, to be honest. That's pretty damn good. I hope you'll sing with me on this one. It's got a little refrain that's really, really easy. It just goes, I gotta think about it now. Gotta get into the song. Okay, so the line is, only love can save us now. And he goes, only love can save us now. Sing that with me. Only love can save us now. Only love can save us. Wow, you've done this before. This is amazing. It happens 3 times in a row. Only love can save us now. Only love can save us now. Only love can save us now. Okay, here we go. Sing for the weary, sing for the strong, those letting go and those still holding on. Sing for the lost and sing for the found, sing, only love can save us now. Only love can save us now. Only love can save us now. Sing for the dreamers and sing.
That's not the line. That's not the line. I'm going to get there. Hang on. I'm going to get there.
Sing for the dreamers and those who don't dare. Sing for the tyrant and those in the square. Sing for the souls that never back down. Sing, only love can save us now. Only love can save us now. Only love can save us now. Let all the bells ring. Let all the angels sing. Let them all tell of one thing. Only love. Yeah, only love can save us now.
Okay, next time, let's hear some harmonies. Don't mess it up.
Sing for the rebel, sing for the regime. Sing for the refugee caught in between. Sing for a truce at the 11th hour. Sing, only love can save us now. Only love can save us now. Only love can save us now.
That's enough.
So sing from the taverns and sing from the hills. Sing from the towers and windowsills. Sing for the president, sing for the king. Sing for your children, but above all sing. Sing it on out and sing it out loud. Sing, only love can save us now. Only love can save us now. Only love can save us now.
Yep. Good job, everybody. Thanks for having me.
Okay, you don't have to sit down because it's intermission. There's cookies, lots and lots of cookies and some cider. Let's try to make it 10 minutes, which we all know means 15. So 10 minutes, everyone. Please take your seats. We'll start again in about 1 minute's time, which we all know means 2. But anyway, 1 minute's time.
Are you having a nice time, ladies and gentlemen? There you go. Chestnuts roasting on an open fire. Jack Frost nipping at your nose. Yuletide carols being sung by a choir, and folks dressed up like Eskimos. Everybody knows a turkey and some mistletoe help to make the season bright. Tiny tots with their eyes all aglow will find it hard to sleep tonight. They know that Santa is on his way. He's bringing lots of toys and goodies on his sleigh. And every mother's child is gonna spy to see if reindeer really know how to fly. And so I offer you this simple phrase to kids from 1 to 92. Although it's been said many times in many ways, Merry Christmas, Merry Christmas, Merry Christmas to you. Welcome back to the second half. Who do we got? All right. Wayne and Nuna coming up here now.
Someone left cookies up here. Is it you? Oh. Thanks.
It was Christmas Eve, babe, in the drunk tank. An old man said to me, won't see another one. And then he sang a song, the rare old Mountain Dew. I turned my face away and dreamed about you. Got on a lucky one, came in 18 to 1.
I've got a feeling this year's for me and you. So happy Christmas. I love you, baby. I can see a better time when all our dreams come true.
They got cars big as bars, they got rivers of gold, but the wind goes right through you, it's no place for the old. When you first took my hand on a cold Christmas Eve, you promised me Broadway was waiting for me. You were handsome.
You were pretty, queen of New York City. When the band finished playing, they howled out for more.
Sinatra was swinging, all the drunks they were singing. We kissed on a corner, then danced through the night. The boys of the NYPD choir were singing Galway Bay, and the bells were ringing out for Christmas Day.
Yeah, that's awesome.
You're a bum, you're a punk.
You're an old slut on junk lying there almost dead on a drip in that bed.
You scumbag, you maggot, you cheap lousy, woo! Happy Christmas, you're ours, I pray God it's our last. The boys of the NYPD choir were singing Galway Bay, and the bells were ringing out for Christmas Day.
I could have been someone.
Well, so could anyone. You took my dreams from me when I first found you.
I kept them with me, babe. I put them with my own. Can't make it all alone. I build my dreams around you.
The boys of the NYPD choir were singing Galway Bay,
And the bells were ringing out. And the bells were ringing out.
and the bells were ringing out.
For Christmas Day.
Oh. David says never eat a shortbread before you go on stage. I say always eat a shortbread before you go on stage. Super simple. Right? They're so super simple to make. I always say this. All right. Scrooge awoke in his own bedroom. There was no doubt about that. But it and his own adjoining sitting room into which he shuffled in his slippers, attracted by a great light there, had undergone a surprising transformation. The walls and ceiling were so hung with living green that it looked like a perfect grove, kind of like me. The leaves of holly, mistletoe, and ivy reflected back the light as if so many little mirrors had been scattered there, and such a mighty blaze went roaring up the chimney that as that petrification of a hearth had never known in Scrooge's name, or Marley's, or for many and many a winter season gone. I also don't know what that means. Heaped upon the floor to form a kind of throne, there were turkeys and geese, game, brawn, great joints of meat, suckling pigs. This is a throne. I'm getting my picture taken. No side shots, please. Long wreaths of sausages, mince pies, plum puddings, barrels of oysters, red hot chestnuts, cherry-cheeked apples, juicy oranges, luscious pears, immense 12th cakes, and great bowls of punch. Fun fact, I've made all of these for David Gray. And I put lentils in all of them. In easy state upon this food couch, there sat a giant, glorious to see, who bore a glowing torch in shape not unlike Plenty's horn, who raised it high to shed its light on Scrooge as he came peeping round the door. Come in, and know me better, man. I am the ghost of Christmas present. Look upon me. You have never seen the like of me before. Never. Have never walked forth with younger members of my family, meaning, for I am very young, my elder brothers born in these later years, perused the phantom. I don't think I have. I'm afraid I have not. Have you had many brothers, Spirit? More than 1,800. A tremendous family to provide for. Spirit, conduct me where you will. I went forth last night on compulsion, and I learned a lesson which is working now. Tonight, if you have aught to teach me, let me profit by it. Touch my robe, said the Spirit. And he had chocolates in his pocket. Do you need a chocolate? It's getting late. Nice. You guys need chocolates? Woohoo, free chocolates. Chocolates? Oh, she's getting all the chocolates. You get a chocolate and you get a chocolate. The ghost of Christmas present. Scrooge did as he was told and held the robe fast. The room and its contents all vanished instantly, and they stood in the city streets upon a snowy Christmas morning. Scrooge and the ghost passed on invisible straight to Scrooge's clerks, and on the threshold of the door, the Spirit smiled and stopped to bless Bob Cratchit's dwelling with the sprinklings of his torch. Then uprose Mrs. Cratchit, dressed out but poorly in a twice-turned gown, but brave in ribbons, which are cheap and make a goodly show for sixpence. And she laid the cloth, assisted by Belinda Cratchit, second of her daughters, also brave in ribbons, while Master Peter Cratchit plunged a fork into the saucepan of potatoes. They gave me the food part. And getting the corners of his monstrous shirt collar, Bob's private property conferred upon his son and heir in honor of the day, into his mouth, rejoiced to find himself so gallantly attired and yearned to show his linen in the fashionable parks. And now 2 smaller Cratchits, boy and girl, came tearing in, screaming that outside the baker's they had smelt the goose and known it for their own, and basking in luxurious thoughts of sage and onion, these young Cratchits danced about the table and exalted Master Peter Cratchit to the skies, while he blew the fire until the slow potatoes, bubbling up, knocked loudly at the saucepan lid to be let out and peeled. Because you can peel potatoes after you boil them. Did they just slip out of their skins? So cool. It's super easy. Everyone takes a drink of cider every time I say super easy. What has ever got your precious father then, said Mrs. Cratchit, and your brother, Tiny Tim? And Martha wasn't as late last Christmas Day by half an hour. Here's Martha, mother, said a girl, appearing as she spoke. Here's Martha, mother, cried the 2 young Cratchits. Hurrah, there's such a goose, Martha. Why, bless your heart alive, my dear, how late you are, said Mrs. Cratchit, kissing her a dozen times and taking off her shawl and bonnet for her. We'd a deal of work to finish up last night, replied the girl, and had to clear away this morning, mother. Well, never mind, so long as you are come, said Mrs. Cratchit. Sit ye down before the fire, dear, and have a warm. No, there's father coming, cried the 2 young Cratchits, who were everywhere at once. Hide, Martha, hide. So Martha hid herself, and in came Bob, the father, with his threadbare clothes darned up and brushed to look as seasonable, and reasonable. And Tiny Tim upon his shoulder. Alas, for Tiny Tim, he bore a little crutch and had his limbs supported by an iron frame. Why, where's our Martha? Cried Bob Cratchit, looking around. Not coming, said Mrs. Cratchit. Not coming, said Bob with a sudden declension. Who wrote this? In his high spirits. For he had been Tim's blood horse all the way from church and had come home rampant. I think that's hungry. Not coming upon Christmas Day. Martha didn't like to see him disappointed if it was only a joke, so she came out prematurely from behind the closet door and ran into his arms while the 2 young Cratchits hustled Tiny Tim and bore him off to the washout that he might hear the pudding singing in the copper. And how did little Tim behave? Asked Mrs. Cratchit when she had rallied Bob in his credulity and Bob had hugged his daughter to his heart's content. As good as gold, said Bob, and better. Somehow he gets thoughtful, sitting by himself so much, and thinks the strangest things you ever heard. He told me coming home that he hoped people saw him in the church because he was a cripple, and it might be pleasant for them to remember upon Christmas Day who made lame beggars walk and blind men see. Bob's voice was tremulous when he told him this, and trembled more when he said that Tiny Tim was growing strong and hardy. His active little crutch was heard upon the floor, and back came Tiny Tim before another word was spoken, escorted by his brother and sister to a stool beside the fire. And while Bob, turning up his cuffs as if, poor fellow, they were capable of being made more shabby, compounded some hot mixture in a jug with gin and lemons and stirred it round and round and put it on the hob to simmer. Master Peter and the two young Cratchits went to fetch the goose, which they soon returned in high procession. I don't have to hold it to 7 minutes, though, this time. Mrs. Cratchit made the gravy ready beforehand in a little saucepan, hissing hot. Master Peter mashed the potatoes with incredible vigor. Miss Belinda sweetened up the applesauce. Martha dusted the hot plates. Bob took Tiny Tim beside him in a tiny corner at the table. The two young Cratchits set chairs for everybody, not forgetting themselves, and mounting guard upon their posts, crammed spoons into their mouths, lest they should shriek for goose before their turn came to be helped. At last, the dishes were set on, and grace was said. It was succeeded by a breathless pause as Mrs. Cratchit, looking slowly all along the carving knife, prepared to plunge it into the breast. But when she did, and when the long-expected gush of stuffing issued forth, one murmur of delight rose all around the board, and even Tiny Tim, excited by the two young Cratchits, beat on the table with the handle of his knife and feebly cried, "Hurrah!" There never was such a goose. Bob said he didn't believe there was ever such a goose cooked. Its tenderness and flavor, size and cheapness were the themes of universal admiration. Eked out by the applesauce and mashed potatoes, it was sufficient dinner for the whole family. Indeed, as Mrs. Cratchit said with great delight, surveying one small atom of a bone upon her dish, they hadn't ate it all at last, yet every one had enough, and the youngest Cratchits in particular were steeped in sage and onion to the eyebrows. But now, the plates being changed by Miss Belinda, Mrs. Cratchit left the room alone, too nervous to bear witness, to take the pudding up and bring it in. Suppose it should not be done enough. Suppose it should break in turning out. I've had this happen. I don't think she used enough Pam. But if it breaks, you just turn it into a trifle. It's super easy. Suppose somebody should have got over the wall of the backyard and stolen it while they were merry with the goose, a supposition at which the two young Cratchits became livid. All sorts of horrors were supposed. Hello, a great deal of steam. The pudding was out of the copper. Yes. A smell like a washing day, that was the cloth. A smell like an eating house, and a pastry cook's next door to each other, with the laundresses next door to that. That was the pudding. That was how the pudding smelled. In half a minute, Mrs. Cratchit entered, flushed but smiling proudly with the pudding, like a speckled cannonball, so hard and firm, blazing in half of a half-quart of ignited brandy and bedight with Christmas holly stuck to the top. Oh, what a wonderful pudding, Bob Cratchit said, and calmly, too, that he regarded it as the greatest success achieved by Mrs. Cratchit since their marriage. Mrs. Cratchit said that now the weight was off her mind, she would confess she had her doubts about the quantity of flour. I don't remember this part. Everybody had something to say about it, but nobody said or thought it was at all a small pudding for a large family. Any Cratchit would have blushed to hint at such a thing. At last the dinner was all done, the cloth was cleared, the hearth swept, and the fire made up. The compound and the jug being tasted and considered perfect, apples and oranges were put upon the table, and a shovelful of chestnuts on the fire. Then all the Cratchit family drew around the hearth, and at Bob Cratchit's elbow stood the family display of glass, 2 tumblers, and a custard cup without a handle. These held the hot stuff from the jug, however, as well as golden goblets would have done, and Bob served it without beaming looks, while the chestnuts on the fire sputtered and crackled noisily. Then Bob proposed, "A Merry Christmas to us all, my dears. God bless us," which all the family re-echoed. God bless us, everyone, said Tiny Tim, the last of all. He sat very close to his father's side upon his little stool. Bob held his withered little hand in his. He loved the child and wished to keep him by his side and dreaded that he might be taken from him. Scrooge raised his head speedily on hearing his own name. Mr. Scrooge, said Bob, I give you Mr. Scrooge, the founder of the feast. Cheers. The founder of the feast indeed, cried Mrs. Cratchit, reddening. I wish I had him here. I'd give him a piece of my mind to feast upon, and I hope he'd have a good appetite for it. Who thinks of Miss Piggy when you hear that line? Yeah. Belinda and Bettina. My dear, said Bob, the children, Christmas Day. It should be Christmas Day, I'm sure, said she, on which one drinks the health of such an odious, stingy, hard, unfeeling man. As Mr. Scrooge. You know he is, Robert. Nobody knows it better than you. My dear, was Bob's mild answer, Christmas Day. I'll drink his health for your sake and the day's, said Mrs. Cratchit, but not for his. A long life to him, a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. He'll be very merry and very happy, I have no doubt. No doubt. The children drank the toast after her. It was the first of their proceedings that had no heartiness in it. Tiny Tim drank it last of all, but he didn't care twopence for it. Scrooge was the ogre of the family. The mention of his name cast a dark shadow on the party, which was not dispelled for a full 5 minutes. After it had passed away, they were 10 times merrier than before, from the mere relief of Scrooge the Baleful being done with. Bob Cratchit told them how he had a situation in his eye for Master Peter, which could bring in, if obtained, a full 5 and 6 weekly. The two young Cratchits laughed tremendously at the idea of Peter's being a man of business, and Peter himself looked thoughtfully at the fire from between his collars as if he were deliberating what particular investments he should favor when he came into receipt of that bewildering fortune. Martha, who was a poor apprentice at a milliner's, then told him what kind of work she had to do and how many hours she worked at a stretch and how she meant to lie abed tomorrow morning for a good long rest. Tomorrow being a holiday, she passed at home. Also, how she had seen a countess and a lord some days before and how the lord was much about as tall as Peter, at which Peter pulled up his collar so high you couldn't have seen his head if you had been there. All this time, the chestnuts in the jug went round and round, and by they had a song about a lost child traveling in the snow from Tiny Tim, who had a plaintive little voice, and sang it very well indeed. There was nothing of high mark in this. They were not a handsome family. They were not well dressed. Their shoes were far from being waterproof. Their clothes were scanty, and Peter might have known, and very likely did, the inside of a pawnbroker's. But they were happy and grateful and pleased with one another and contented with the time. And when they faded and looked happier yet in the bright sprinklings of the Spirit's torch at parting, Scrooge had his eye upon them, and especially on Tiny Tim, until the very last. It was a great surprise to Scrooge as the scene vanished to hear a hearty laugh. It was a much greater surprise to Scrooge to recognize it as his own nephew's and to find himself in a bright, dry, gleaming room with a spirit standing smiling by his side and looking at that same nephew. It is a fair, even-handed, noble adjustment of things that while there is infection and disease and sorrow, there is nothing in the world so irresistibly contagious as laughter and good humor. When Scrooge's nephew laughed, Scrooge's niece by marriage laughed as heartily as he, and their assembled friends, being not a bit behindhand, laughed out lustily. He said that Christmas was a humbug, as I live, cried Scrooge's nephew. He believed it, too. More shame for him, Fred, said Scrooge's niece indignantly. She was very pretty, exceedingly pretty, with a dimpled, surprised-looking capital face, a ripe little mouth that seemed made to be kissed, and no doubt it was, all kinds of good little dots about her chin that melted into one another when she laughed, and the sunniest pair of eyes you ever saw in any little creature's head. He's a comical old fellow, said Scrooge's nephew. That's the truth, and not so pleasant as he might be. However, his offenses carry their own punishment, and I have nothing ill to say against him. Who suffers by his ill whims? Himself, always. Here he takes it into his head to dislike us, and he won't come and dine with us. What's the consequence? He loses dinner. Indeed, I think he loses a very good dinner, interrupted Scrooge's niece. Everybody said the same, and they must be allowed to have been competent judges because they had just had dinner, and with the dessert upon the table, were clustered around the fire by lamplight. Well, I'm very glad to hear it, said Scrooge's nephew, because I haven't had any great faith in these young housekeepers. What do you say, Topper? Topper clearly had his eye on one of Scrooge's niece's sisters, for he answered that a bachelor was a wretched outcast who had no right to express an opinion on the subject. Harsh. Although I think he was dropping a hint, actually. Wait do you see what's coming. Whereat Scrooge's niece's sister, the plump one with the lace tucker, not the one with the roses, she blushed. After tea, they had some music, for they were a musical family and knew what they were about. When they sung Glee or Catch, I can assure you, especially Topper, who could growl away in the bass like a good one and never swell the large veins in his forehead or get red in the face over it. But they didn't devote the whole evening to music. After a while, they played at forfeits, for it's good to be children sometimes, and never better than at Christmas, when its mighty founder was a child himself. There was first a game at Blindsman Bluff, and I no more believe Topper was really blinded than I believe he had eyes in his boots. The way in which he went after that plump sister in the tucker, knocking down fire irons, tumbling over the chairs, bumping against the piano, smothering himself among the curtains. Wherever she went, there went he. He always knew where the plump sister was. He wouldn't catch anybody. I just need a drink. Maybe a cookie. I haven't had a cookie for like 20 minutes. He wouldn't catch anybody else. See, you can talk after eating shortbread, David Gray. If you had fallen up against him, as some of them did, and stood there, he would have made a feint of endeavoring to seize you, which would have been an affront to your understanding, and which would instantly have sidled off in the direction of the plump sister. Here is a new game, said Scrooge. 1/2 hour, spirit, only one. It was a game called Yes and No. Okay, you're right. Yes and no, where Scrooge's nephew had to think of something, and the rest must find out what, only answering to their questions yes and no, as the case was. The fire of questioning to which he was exposed elicited from him that he was thinking of an animal, a live animal, rather a disagreeable animal, a savage animal, an animal that growled and grunted sometimes, and talked sometimes, and lived in London, and walked about the streets, and wasn't made a show of, and wasn't led by anybody, and didn't live in a menagerie, and was never killed in a market, and was not a horse, or an ass, or a cow, or a bull, or a tiger, or a dog, or a pig, or a cat, or a bear. That was all one sentence. At every new question put to him, this nephew burst into a fresh roar of laughter, and was so inexpressibly tickled that he was obliged to get up off the sofa and stamp. At last, the plump sister cried out, "I have found it out. I know what it is, Fred. I know what it is." "What is it?" cried Fred. "It's your Uncle Scrooge." Which it certainly was. Admiration was the universal sentiment, though some objected to the reply to "Is it a bear?" ought to have been yes. Uncle Scrooge had imperceptibly become so gay and light of heart that he would have had to drink to the unconscious company in an inaudible speech. But the whole scene passed off in the breath of the last words spoken by his nephew, and he and the spirit were once again upon their travels. Much they saw and far they went, and many homes they visited, but always with a happy end. The spirit stood beside sick beds, and they were cheerful, on foreign lands, and they were close to home. By struggling men, and they were patient in their greater hope. By poverty, and it was rich. In almshouse, hospital, and jail, in misery's every refuge, where a vain man, in his little brief authority, had not made fast the door and barred the spirit out, he left his blessing and taught Scrooge his precepts. Suddenly, as they stood together in an open place, the bells struck 12. Scrooge looked about him for the ghost and saw it no more.
There you go.
Can you tell we didn't have time for a rehearsal?
This is rehearsal.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Three wise men.
We three kings of Orient are, bearing gifts we traverse afar, field and fountain, moor and mountain.
star. Oh, star of wonder, star of light, star with royal beauty bright, westward leading, still proceeding, guide us to thy perfect light.
Born a king on Bethlehem's plain, gold I bring to crown him again. King forever, ceasing never, over us all to reign.
Oh, star of wonder, star of light, star with royal beauty bright, westward leading, still proceeding, guide us to thy perfect light.
Frankincense to offer have I, incense owes a deity nigh, prayer and praising, all men raising, worth to the God on high.
Oh, star of wonder, star of light, star with royal beauty bright, westward leading, still proceeding, guide us to thy perfect light. Myrrh is mine, its bitter perfume breathes a life of gathering gloom. Sorrow sighing, bleeding, dying, locked in a stone-cold tomb. Oh, star of wonder, star of light, star with royal beauty bright, westward leading, still proceeding, guide us to thy perfect light. Glorious now, behold him arise, King and God and sacrifice. Alleluia, alleluia, sound to the earth and skies. Oh, star of wonder, star of light, star with royal beauty bright, westward leading, still proceeding, guide us to thy perfect light.
Okay. You ready? It's coming on Christmas, cutting
singing songs of joy and peace. Oh, I wish I had a river I could skate away on. But it don't snow here, stays pretty green. I'm gonna make a lot of money, then I'm gonna quit this crazy scene. Oh, I wish I had a river I could skate away on. I wish I had a river so long I would teach my feet to fly. Oh, I wish I had a river I could skate away on. I made my baby cry. You tried hard to help me, you know. You put me at ease, and you loved me so naughty, made me weak in the knees. Oh, I wish I had a river I could skate away on. I'm so hard to handle, selfish and I'm sad. Now I'm gonna lost the best baby that I ever had. Oh, I wish I had a river I could skate away on. I wish I had a river so long I would teach my feet to fly. Whoa, I wish I had a river I could skate away on. I made my baby say goodbye. It's coming on Christmas. They're cutting down trees. They're putting up reindeer and singing songs of joy and peace. Oh, I wish I had a river I could skate away on. Thank you.
Remembering the prediction of old Jacob Marley and lifting up his eyes, Scrooge beheld a solemn phantom, draped and hooded, coming like a mist in the ground towards him. The phantom slowly, gravely, silently approached. When it came near him, Scrooge bent down upon his knee, for in the air through which this spirit moved, it seemed to scatter gloom and mystery. It was shrouded in a deep black garment, which concealed its head, its face, its form, and left nothing of it visible save one outstretched hand. He knew no more, for the spirit neither spoke nor moved. I am in the presence of the ghost of Christmas yet to come. Ghost of the future. Oh, I fear you more than any specter I have seen, but As I know your purpose is to do me good, and as I hope to live to be another man from what I was, I am prepared to bear you company and do it with a thankful heart. Will you not speak to me? It gave him no reply. The hand was pointed straight before them. Lead on. Lead on. The night is waning fast, and it is precious time to me, I know. Lead on, spirit. They scarcely seemed to enter the city, for the city rather seemed to spring up about them. But there they were, in the heart of it, on change amidst the merchants. The spirit stopped beside one little knot of businessmen. Observing that the hand was pointed to them, Scrooge advanced to listen to their talk. "No," said a great man with a monstrous chin. "I don't know much about it either way. I only know he's dead." "When did he die?" inquired another. "Last night, I believe." "What was the matter with him? I thought he'd never die." "Oh, God knows," said the first with a yawn. "Well, what has he done with his money?" asked the red-faced gentleman. "I haven't heard," said the man with the large chin. "Company, perhaps. He hasn't left it to me, that's all I know." Bye-bye. Scrooge was at first inclined to be surprised that the spirit should attach importance to conversation apparently so trivial. But feeling assured that it must have some hidden purpose, he set himself to consider what it was likely to be. It could scarcely be supposed to have had any bearing on the death of Jacob, his old partner, for that was past, and this ghost province was the future. He looked about in that very place for his own image. But another man stood in his accustomed corner, and though the clock pointed at his usual time of day for being there, he saw no likeness of himself among the multitudes that poured in through the porch. It gave him little surprise, however, for he had been revolving in his mind a change in life, and he thought and hoped that he saw his newborn resolutions carried out in this. They left the busy scene and went into the obscure part of the town to a low shop, where iron rags, bones, bottles, and greasy offal were bought by a gray-haired rascal of great age who sat smoking his pipe. Scrooge and the Phantom came into the presence of this man just as a woman with a heavy bundle slunk into the shop. But she had scarcely entered when another woman similarly laden came in too, and she was closely followed by a man in faded black. After a short period of blank astonishment in which the old man with the pipe had joined them, they all three burst into a laugh. "Let the charwoman alone to be the first," cried she who had entered first. "Let the laundress alone to be the second, and let the undertaker's man alone to be the third. Look here, old Joe, here's a chance. If we hadn't all three met here without meaning it."
You could have met in a better place. You were made free of it long ago, you know. And the other two ain't strangers. Now, what have you got to sell? Hey, what have you got to sell?
"Half a minute's patience, Joe, and you will see." "What odds, then? What odds, Mrs. Dilbert?" said the woman. "Every person has a right to take care of themselves. He always did. Who's the worse for a loss of a few things like these? Well, not a dead man, I suppose." Mrs. Dilber, whose manner was remarkable for general agreement, said, "No, indeed, ma'am." "If he wanted to keep him after he was dead, a wicked old screw, why wasn't he natural in his lifetime? If he had been, he'd have had somebody to look after him when he was struck with death, instead of lying gasping his last there alone by himself. It's the truest word that was ever spoke. It's a judgment on him. Oh, I wish it was a little heavier judgment. It should have been, you may depend on it, if I could have laid my hands on anything else. Open that bundle, old Joe, and let me know the value of it.
Speak it plain. I'm not afraid to be the first, nor afraid of them to see it. Joe went down on his knees for the greater convenience of opening the bundle and dragged out a large and heavy roll of some dark stuff.
What do you call this? Bed curtains?
Ah, bed curtains. Don't drop that oil in the blankets now.
His blankets?
Who else's do you think? He isn't likely to take gold without him, I dare say. Oh, you may look through that till your eyes ache, but you won't find a hole in it, not a threadbare place. It's the best he had, and a fine one, too. They'd have wasted it by dressing him up in it if it hadn't been for me.
Scrooge listened to the dialogue in horror.
Spirit, I see the case of this unhappy man might be my own. My life tends that way now. Oh, merciful heaven, what is this?
The scene had changed, and now he almost touched a bare, uncurtained bed. A pale light rising in the outer air fell straight upon this bed, and on it, unwatched, unwept, uncared for, was the body of this plundered man, unknown.
Spirit, let me see some tenderness connected with the death, or this dark chamber spirit will forever be present to me.
The ghost conducted him to poor Bob Cratchit's house, the dwelling he had visited the night before, and found the mother and the children seated around the fire. Quiet. Very quiet. The noisy little Cratchits were as still as statues in one corner and sat looking up at Peter, who had a book before him. The mother and her daughters were engaged in needlework, but surely they were very quiet. And he took a child and set him in the midst of them. Where had Scrooge heard those words? He had not dreamed them. The boy must have read them out as he and the spirit crossed the threshold. Why did he not go on? The mother laid her work upon the table and put her hand up to her face. The color hurts my eyes, she said. The color. Oh, poor tiny Tim. They're better now again. It makes them weak by candlelight, and I wouldn't want to show weak eyes to your father when he comes home. For the world. It must be near his time. Past it, rather, Peter answered, shutting up his book. But I think he's walked a little slower than he used these past few evenings, Mother. Oh, I have known him to walk with Tiny Tim upon his shoulder very fast indeed. And so have I, cried Peter, often. And so have I, exclaimed another. So had all. But he was very light to carry. And his father loved him so. It was no trouble at all. Oh, there's your father at the door. She hurried out to meet him. And little Bob in his comforter, he had need for it, poor fellow, came in. His tea was ready for him on the hob, and they all tried who should help him to it most. Then the two young Cratchits got up on his knees and laid each child a little cheek against his face, as if they said, "Don't mind it, Father, don't be grieved." Bob was very cheerful with them and spoke pleasantly to all the family. He looked at the work upon the table and praised the industry and speed of Mrs. Cratchit and the girls. They would be done long before Sunday, he said. Sunday? You went today then, Robert? Yes, my dear, returned Bob. I wish you could have gone. It would have been so good for you to see how
green a place it is. But you'll see it often. I promised him that. I promised I would walk there on a Sunday. My child. My little child. He broke down all at once. He couldn't help it. If he could have helped it, he and his child would have been farther apart, perhaps, than they were. Spectre, said Scrooge, something informs me that our parting moment is at hand. I know it, but I know not how. Tell me what man that was with the covered face whom we saw lying dead. The ghost of Christmas yet to come conveyed him to a dismal, wretched, ruinous churchyard. The spirit stood among the graves and pointed down to one. Before I draw nearer to that stone which you point, answer me one question. Are the shadows of the things that will be, or are they shadows of things that may be only? Still the ghost pointed downward to the grave by which it stood. Men's courses will foreshadow certain ends to which, if persevered in, they must lead. But if the courses are departed from, the ends will change. And say it is thus with what thou showst me. The spirit was immovable as ever. Scrooge crept towards it, trembling as he went, and following the finger, read upon the stone of the neglected grave his own name, Ebenezer Scrooge. Am I that man who lay upon the bed? No, spirit. Oh, no, spirit, hear me. I am not the man I was. I will not be the man I must have been but for this intercourse. Why show me this if I am past hope? Assure me that I yet may change these shadows you have shown me by an altered life. For the first time, the kind hand faltered. I will honor Christmas in my heart and try to keep it all the year. I will live in the past, the present, and the future. The spirits of all three shall strive within me. I will not shut out the lessons that they teach. Oh, tell me that I may sponge away the writing on this stone. Holding up his hands in one last prayer to have his fate reversed, he saw an alteration in the phantom's hood and dress. It shrunk, collapsed, and dwindled down into a bedpost. Yes. And the bedpost was his own. The bed was his own. The room was his own. Best and happiest of all the time before him was his own to make amends in. He was checked in his transports by the churches ringing out the lustiest peals he had ever heard. Running to the window, he opened it and put out his head. No fog, no mist, no night, clear, bright, stirring, golden day. What's today? Cried Scrooge, calling downward to a boy in Sunday clothes who perhaps had loitered in to look about him. Eh? What's today, my fine fellow? Oh, today? Why, it's Christmas Day. It's Christmas Day. I haven't missed it. Hello, my fine fellow. Hello. Do you know the poulterers in the next street but one at the corner? I should hope I did. An intelligent boy, a remarkable boy. Do you know where they sold the prize turkey that was hanging up there? Not the little prize turkey, the big one. What, the one as big as me? What a delightful boy. It's a pleasure to talk to him. Yes, my buck. Oh, it's hanging there now. It is? Well, go buy it. Walker, exclaimed the boy. No. I am in earnest. Go and buy it and tell them to bring it here that I may give them direction on where to take it. Come back with the man and I'll give you a shilling. Come back with him in less than 5 minutes and I'll give you a half a crown. The boy was off like a shot. I'll send it to Bob Cratchit's. He shan't know who sends it. It's the size of Tiny Tim. The hand in which he wrote the address was not a steady one, but write it he did somehow, and he went to the stairs to open the street door, ready for the coming of the poulterer's man. Ooh, it was a turkey. He could never have stood upon his legs, that bird. He would have snapped them short of a minute like sticks of sealing wax. He dressed himself all in his best, and at last got out into the streets. The people by this time were pouring forth, as he had seen them with the ghost of Christmas present, and walking with his hands behind him, Scrooge regarded everyone with a delighted smile. He looked so irresistibly pleasant, in a word, that 3 or 4 good-humored fellows said, "Well, good morning, sir. A Merry Christmas to you." And Scrooge said often afterwards that of all the blithe sounds that he had ever heard, those were the blithest in his ears. In the afternoon, he turned the steps towards his nephew's house. He passed the door a dozen times before he had the courage to up and knock. But he made a dash, and he did it. "Is your master at home, my dear?" said Scrooge to the girl. Nice girl, very. "Yes, sir." "Where is he, my love?" "He's in the dining room, sir, along with the mistress." "Oh, yeah, he knows me," said Scrooge with his hand already in the dining room lock. "I'll go in here, my dear. Fred!" "I bless my soul," cried Fred. "Who's that?" "It's I, your Uncle Scrooge. I have come for dinner. Will you let me in, Fred?" Let him in? It's a mercy he didn't shake his arm off. He was at home in 5 minutes. Nothing could have been heartier. His niece looked just the same. So did Topper when he came. So did the plump sister when she came. So did everyone when they came. Wonderful party, wonderful games, wonderful unanimity, wonderful happiness. Oh, but he was early at the office next morning. Oh, he was early there. If he could only be there first and catch Bob Cratchit coming late. That was the thing he had set his heart upon. And he did it. The clock struck 9, no Bob. 1/4 past, no Bob. Bob was a full 18 minutes and a half behind his time. Bob's hat was off before he opened the door, his comforter too. He was on his stool in a jiffy, driving away with his pen as if he were trying to overtake 9 o'clock. "Hello," growled Scrooge in his accustomed voice as near as he could feign it. "What do you mean coming here at that time of day?" "I'm very sorry, sir. I am behind my time." "You are?" "Yes, I should think you are. Step this way, please." "Oh, it's only once a year, sure. It shan't be repeated. I was making rather merry yesterday, sir. Now, I'll tell you what, my friend. I am not going to stand for this sort of thing any longer. And therefore," Scrooge continued, leaping from the stool and giving Bob such a dig in his waistcoat that he staggered back into the tank again, "and therefore I'm about to raise your salary." Bob trembled and got a little nearer to the ruler. "A Merry Christmas, Bob," said Scrooge with an earnestness that could not be mistaken as he clapped him on the back. "A merrier Christmas, Bob, my good fellow, than I have given you for many a year. I'll raise your salary and endeavor to assist your struggling family, and we will discuss your affairs this very afternoon over a Christmas bowl of smoking bishop, Bob. Make up the fires and buy a second coal scuttle before you dot another I, Bob Cratchit." Scrooge was better than his word. He did it all and infinitely more. And to Tiny Tim, who did not die, he was a second father. He became as good a friend, as good a master, and as good a man as the good old city knew, or any other good old city, town, or borough in the good old world. Some people laughed to see the alteration in him, but his own heart laughed, and that was quite enough for him. He had no further intercourse with spirits, but lived in that respect upon the total abstinence principle ever afterwards. And it was always said of him that he knew how to keep Christmas well, if any man alive possessed the knowledge. May that be truly said of us and all of us. And so, as Tiny Tim observed, God bless us, everyone.
That's Jonathan Love, everyone. Jonathan Love. Let's all stay standing because you've been sitting for a very long time. Stay up. Stay up. Don't sit unless you need to. That's fine. Just some very quick thank yous to John for letting us play in his house. Thanks for that. To Anne Yates-LeBerge, who did a million things that made this work tonight. To all of the volunteers, to Julie for making cookies, Wayne and Nuna. Barb Higgins showed up in her nightgown. Thank you, Greg, on the piano. And of course, Mr. Tim Tamashiro. Okay. God bless us, everyone. So while we're standing, we'd like to have us all sing one last song. Now it has 7,000 verses. We're only going to do 4 of them.
And before we do that, can we give thanks to our visionary producer?